All right, we got a special guest here we want to get to. Your guy. This is your guy. This is Stephen A. Smith,
careful.
ESPN, First Take. What's going on, Stephen A.? How you doing, man?
What's up, fellas? How y'all doing?
All right.
Dillon Brooks, your thoughts?
Not a dirty player, but a dirty play, without question. I think that what he did not just warrants his ejection. I think it warrants a suspension. That's my personal stake on it. I'm incredibly sad, and I echo Steve Kerr's sentiments about Gary Payton II. The work that he's put in, the way that he's developed over the years, the way that he's developed throughout this season. I think that he's an important component to the team's success. And I'm not saying they can't overcome it. They can't make up for his absence. But the bottom line is it's going to be something that's definitely and clearly difficult to do.
Stephen A., we heard you, and we hear you all the time about your affection for the Splash Brothers, but through 2 games, they're 13 of 45, and I told my partner, are they just missing? Because I'm going to ask you, or is that Memphis's defense that has them 13 of 45 from deep?
Well, I say they're just missing. Because even though some of the shots have been contested, others have not, number one. And number two, even the contested shots, the fact of the matter is when they've let go and unleashed, they usually make the shots that we've seen them miss. So I would tell you that they're just missing right now, and it's not something I expect to last.
Stephen A. Smith joining us on 95.7 The Game. You can hear him on ESPN every day on First Take and a variety of other shows. He's all over the pre- and post-game. Who's the best player on the Golden State Warriors to try to guard Ja Morant now?
Wow. Well, my answer to that, honestly speaking, I haven't seen anybody that has a chance of guarding him. Steph Curry doesn't have that ability. Klay Thompson's not 100% still. We know this. Andrew Wiggins is a bit too stiff defensively on the perimeter, I believe, to guard him. I think the best shot that you possibly have, believe it or not, is Kuminga. And the reason that I say that is because if Ja Morant drives to the hole, he has the athleticism and the ability to elevate, to contest those shots, which means that he has a better chance than the rest of turning Ja Morant into a perimeter shooter. We've seen Ja Morant hit a few threes in this series, more so than he did clearly in the last series. But the bottom line is, when you take into account his athleticism and his explosiveness, particularly at the basket. But one of the things we rave about with Kuminga, his explosiveness and his athleticism and his ability to be the skywalker that he is. That's what you're dealing with. He doesn't have the lateral movement and footwork to defend Ja Morant per se, but because of his athleticism, his size, his height, and his ability to get up, he can turn Morant into more of a perimeter shooter than others might. And that's why I say I don't think it would stop Morant, but I think that it has the best shot of containing him to some degree.
Stephen A., I was telling my partner I didn't think Memphis could go Olivia Newton-John, but they got physical. And when GP2 went down and there was no retaliation, I'm a 70s baby, I'm a bit disappointed that nothing happened after that. So I don't want to hear what's going to happen Saturday. Something may, but I felt like the Warriors collectively let a moment get away. You say what to that?
I think you're overreacting. I really do. And that's a big deal coming from me, because who the hell am I to tell somebody they're overreacting? But that's exactly what I think you're doing, and here's why. They had an opportunity to win this game. If you remember, Draymond Green got elbowed in the face, bleeding, had to depart from the game. Gary Payton gets injured and what have you. You're already an undersized squad. And so you take all of those things into consideration with both Klay and Steph being off. And what do? You find yourself in a situation where you got a lead in the fourth quarter. You were in position to win this game. If Steph and Klay had buried a couple of shots, you closed the deal. The fact of the matter is you were still in a position to win, and that would have been the best revenge at all. I don't believe the Golden State Warriors need to go out of character in order to win. I just think they need to make shots.
Stephen A. Smith joining Steiny Guru on 95.7 The Game. You can hear him on ESPN. I heard a little bit of you guys this morning talking about Draymond Green and his outspokenness. We talk a lot about Draymond Green out here, and he is a fascinating guy. I don't support him a lot of the time, but I'd want him on my team. Just your thoughts on Draymond Green, the flagrant, his relationship with opposing fans, and just his whole act.
Well, first of all, I don't think it's an act. It's truly him.
Sure.
I would know this because the many times throughout his career, when I've spoken to Draymond Green, the same guy that you see on the court, the same guy that you see in his teammates' faces, the same guy that you see speaking to the media, is the same guy that has got on the phone or has been face-to-face with me. You are who you are, and I think that that's what people have to recognize about him. I find him to be real and authentic, and I respect the hell out of him for that. Having said that, like you, I don't always agree with him. One of the things that I've harped about two things with Draymond, and Draymond would tell you this based off of the conversations he and I have had together over the years with one another. A, improve your damn jump shot. Because if Draymond Green was a better jump shooter, let me tell you something right now, the Warriors are a dynasty. As often as he's open with his playmaking ability, his defensive prowess, his basketball IQ, if Draymond Green was a consistently good open jump shooter, the Warriors would win titles. That's number one. Number two, I think he's entirely too emotional with the referees at times. I need you in the game. I don't need you getting ejected in the finals. I don't need you getting ejected in the playoffs. I don't need that. I don't need you getting ejected in game one of Memphis and you ultimately won that game. The fact of the matter is this team is better with him on the court than without him. And sometimes that has to take priority over his emotions. Having said that, that's separate and apart to what he said about the fans. I'm bleeding on the court after getting elbowed in the eye. I'm laid out. You got doctors coming over to me to treat me. You don't know whether I'm concussed or anything. And you're cheering about that? That offended him. So would I have reacted by giving them the bird? No. But the reality is I understand where he was coming from in regards to that. I don't agree with him giving them the bird, but I agree with him speaking out against them the way that he did. And last but not least, they're the enemies. As far as I'm concerned, if you're a professional athlete, the only people who you should care about loving you is your home fan base. You should want to be a pariah with everybody else. You're trying to take them out. And you don't mind telling them that, and you don't mind being unapologetic about it. You're letting them know, I'm coming for you. I'm coming to take you down. I want to I want to send you into the off season as quickly as possible, and I want to smile while doing it, knowing it's going to leave you miserable for an entire off season because you thought your team had a chance and we ruined it. I like that. Then when you see otherwise, it's because you got people thinking about their brand and about the fact that they've got a product or some image that they will be able to sell to the masses once the off season arrives, whether it's sneaker deals or anything else. And that's what they're thinking about. I like the fact that we got a guy that says, damn all of that. I could give a damn about y'all because y'all are the enemies. If he was that way towards the home fans in San Francisco or previously at the Oracle, we got a different argument. But who the hell is anybody to say he's supposed to care about what the enemy thinks? If the opposing fans, they're your enemies. And I don't mind them treating them that way.
Stephen A., if there was an offering plate, I'd put some money in it. Keep preaching. Let me ask you about Steve Kerr and his comments about Dillon Brooks breaking the code. You've been around the league. For the people listening that don't know what he meant, did you agree with him? But what's the code about?
You're supposed to be mindful of making sure that you don't cause injury to a player, thereby jeopardizing his money and his career. It's not an accident that Steve Kerr brought up the fact that Gary Payton had been working his tail off all of these years to get to this level in his career. And that you should automatically understand that you should be mindful of that when it comes to potentially doing bodily harm to a player. Or in the case of Marcus Smart, where Steve Kerr spoke in similar fashion. Marcus Smart is just a guy that's rough and rugged, and he's going to play all out every single play. I have no doubt that he meant no intentional harm to Steph Curry. But it's a regular season game, in the middle of the game and you diving on the brother's ankle and foot, understanding or having no regard to the potential bodily harm that could do. It wasn't a dirty play on Marcus Smart's part, but Steve Kerr's point shouldn't be ignored either. You're playing, this is your livelihood. And the slightest thing that you do in that regard can wreak havoc on the body of on the physical body of an opposing player. To not have any regard for that is not something that professional athletes do because they understand what's at stake. In the case of Dillon Brooks, look at the swipe he took. It was at the head of Gary Payton while he was elevated and off his feet. So he came down and ultimately fractured his elbow, I believe, because of it. How could you not be mindful of the potential damage that could have done? I don't think Dillon Brooks is a dirty player by any stretch. His history and his resume doesn't say that. But it was clearly a dirty play. If anybody has the right to speak up about that, it's Steve Kerr.
Stephen A. Smith joining Steiny Guru on 95.7 The Game. Just a couple more, Stephen A. I know you're busy, and I appreciate the time you've already taken. Let me ask you this. How's Philly embracing James Harden these days?
Uh-oh.
Not well. I mean, the man hasn't shot. He hasn't attempted 20 shots in any game since he's arrived in Philadelphia. Did y'all know that?
Can he get 20 shots in these days?
Not one. He hasn't attempted 20 shots, and he hasn't scored 25 points or better in his last 13 games. That's not the James Harden we know. And so I think it's one of those situations where you really got to ask yourself, has he just lost it? He can still play. He can still be productive. But is the James Harden that we once knew and loved no more? You gotta ask that question now. It's a legitimate question because he simply can't gain the level of separation he once could to do the damage offensively that he has done. Now, some people will blame it on the coaching, the system, or whatever. What I would say is James Harden wanted out of Houston. He couldn't get out of Houston initially. So he forced his way out by coming in overweight and out of shape. He had to lose some of that weight once he ultimately arrived in Brooklyn. That's how the hamstring injury took place. Once the hamstring injury took place, it took him forever to recover from that hamstring injury. And then he came back this year, not too enthused about being a Brooklyn. As a result, here he is, hampered and compromised. It's a difference between getting ready and staying ready. The LeBrons of the world and others like that stayed ready all the time. James Harden's proven he's one of those guys that gets ready. And when you get ready, sometimes getting ready compromises you being in supreme health. And that's what we're looking at with James Harden. And right now, that's costing him.
Stephen A., last one, back to Ja. I'm always running around the studio asking my partner Steiny about who does he remind you of. That's what I do with sports. Like, give me a comp. And Ja last night, after the Warriors took the lead, Stephen A., I said it's a wrap, it's over. He was Michael Jackson at the Apollo. Who does Ja remind you of? Anybody? Because I get Derrick Rose vibes.
One or two. I would tell you a bigger version than Allen Iverson.
All right.
Okay.
Or I would tell you a younger Russell Westbrook.
We heard. Okay, man.
I like it.
All right, there it is.
Those are the two. Those are the two that jump out to my mind. He's incredibly athletic. He's adroit at finishing at the basket. He's a fierce competitor who's always in attack mode, and he's unapologetic about it. Yeah. That would be Allen Iverson, and that would be a young Russell Westbrook.
Hey, Steven, we may have to send you a check. You're a big part of the show, and when my boy gets on my nerves or I get on his, we play this.
You better be careful.
Hey, you was hot, but we use that a lot. But we appreciate your time, man.
No problem, man. Y'all take care, man. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Stephen A.
Smith, officially a friend of the program.
No doubt.